the Chicagoland area. Justin, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, dude? Pumped to talk.
Yeah, we've actually been off here talking about sports, football and basketball and baseball and all that. He's a White Sox fan, so you guys be praying for my man Justin. As soon as he said White Sox fan, we're just gonna jump right into this, okay?
The
As
White
soon as
Sox
he
Cubs
said
World Series, man. I can see
that's
it.
exactly right. As soon as he said White Sox fan, I said, "Well, I'm a Lions and a Falcons fan after
Ooh.
this weekend. Anybody in Detroit and anybody in Atlanta, so at least the Braves are halfway decent." Hey, Justin, real quick, tell everybody in our audience, real quick, a little bit about what you've got going on and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So, one, I really appreciate you having me on the show. And Greg Reed introduced us to each other. And he's a great man, just an awesome entrepreneur. But it's a very simple formula from what I've seen for global successful entrepreneurs and global successful companies. Is you see a problem, solve the problem solve, successful company. So that's all my firm Brepic has done in the PR space. I was a journalist for 20 years and created my entire business model based on how PR firms annoyed me for 20 years. So saw a problem, created a solution, solved it, successful company.
You know what's funny is in my 10X planner every day, what problem can I solve today? Every day it's written on the
Yep,
top of my journal.
not a surprise.
No, I own a real estate company. We've got teams in Birmingham and a team in Atlanta every morning. That and my Grow Stack Drive team, we talk about, hey guys, what problem can we solve today? Well,
Yep,
obviously you mentioned our mutual friend Greg Reed. Greg is the co-author from 3 Feet from Gold. Actually had Sharon Lecter on last week with me as
wow,
well.
yeah, she's a powerhouse, man.
Dude, she's phenomenal. But Greg is a dear friend of mine. He's been an unbelievable um, confidant and
Yep.
mentor for me. I know the past several months. Justin, talk a little bit about you. You mentioned that business is broken. I think you said broken down into three stages or three things: see a problem,
Hmm.
meet a problem, successful business. Talk to me
Yep.
about Brepic and kind of what you guys do in your business and kind of what you guys have to offer in the entrepreneur business realm.
Sure. I appreciate you asking that. So a good part of my day is talking to global leaders like you. I have between 5 and 10 conversations every Monday through Friday like this with folks around the world, and time and time again, it's the same theme. It's people who are successful. They don't try to be everything for everyone. They try to be one or two really great things for a certain type of audience. So that's what my firm does. The problem that I saw as a journalist for 20 years, being annoyed, was as a journalist you get hundreds of press releases every single day from people you don't know, and not only does that annoy you, it burns bridges. So my firm's solution to that problem is my firm creates actual newsworthy stories similar to what I did as a journalist. Becomes a link on the client's website under news or blogs, so it look like a story you see in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution or the Detroit Free Press or whatever that is. Then I take that link and pitch it to media locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. If media is interested, put them in touch with the client contact moving forward. So that's literally all my business does. That's on my website. There's a 4-step process. So that process, which is extremely successful, delivers huge results, works for any business size, any location, any vertical. It doesn't matter. And so I personally, and my firm only works with folks with a visionary, abundance mindset. And so those folks, especially since COVID, are not, there's no panic, there's no cost, there's no scarcity mindset. They're just investing and pivoting like crazy right now. So frankly, it weeds out most of the population and most business owners and focuses on a certain type of person who has the right mindset and they want to be in news at a high level. And so they hire someone who's living in their superpowers, in their zone of genius at all times to do just that.
I love it. I hear the O'Hare airplane going over your head
That's
right now.
actually an executive regional airport,
Oh, is
and
it?
it's like the millionaires and billionaires fly their
So
planes there.
it's not Grant Cardone and his Gulfstream 550, is it by any chance?
It might be. Yeah,
you
it's
talked
possible.
about you talked about mindset, Justin, and obviously you talked about mindset, and you touched on COVID, and you talked about kind
Yep.
of what happened. And you talked about entrepreneurial mindset. Obviously, I'm a Grant Cardone licensee. I'm close with Grant and Jared. I was actually on the
Yep.
phone with Jared this morning for about
Nice.
15, 20 minutes, kind of talking to him through building as we build our sales team at Grow Stack Drive. And one of the things you mentioned, we like to work with people who them on the mindset side are really big minded. Like
Yep.
this COVID wasn't even literally my business has we've grown
Skyrocketed. Right.
619%. So
Yep.
619% through COVID. It's been
Right.
unbelievable.
Q2 was the biggest quarter my company's ever had because it's
It's
all about mindset. It's the number one thing. It's a magnet for attracting people with that mindset, and then it repels people that don't. Haven't.
Talk to me about that mindset, Justin. Obviously, so you talked a little bit about your background of being a sports writer, an
Mm-hmm.
editor, and
Yep.
you covered sports for years.
Yep.
So one of the things, like I mentioned to you earlier, David Pollock's a really, really good friend of mine. We play men's league together. We've been playing basketball together for years. Talk to me about the mindset of the entrepreneur and like the mindset of champion athletes, not just regular athletes, but champion
Yep.
athletes.
It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So when you talk to David, tell him I saw the video of him when he did like a standing jump on top of like boxes that were like they had to be 6 or 7. I don't remember that, but it was so high. I was like,
Yeah.
so the mentality of Olympic level, professional level, high Division I level athletes and entertainers who in the same type of elite level, it's very similar to the mindset of an insanely high level entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is you have to put your brain and mind in a certain place where rejection doesn't faze you, up and down emotions doesn't faze you, very likely some type of traumatic experience as a child or your adult life doesn't faze you. You just push through it. And as a sports editor and as an entrepreneur, I've talked to a ton of, NBA players, NHL players. Like, it's the same. There's really no difference. And in terms of being paid, it's the same thing too, where high-level entrepreneurs are paid very large sums usually to perform, to quote-unquote perform, very similar to how an athlete and or an entertainer, a singer, an actor is paid to perform. So there's really no difference other than the vertical that they're living in.
One of the things I mentioned earlier, we talked about off air, we talked about the Pontiac Silverdome. I grew up about 6 blocks from the Silverdome.
Right.
One of my best friends when I was in middle school, his mom worked at the Silverdome, so we would go over and go in, and literally, this was when Isaiah first couple 2 or 3 years in Detroit,
right.
83, 84,
yep.
or something like that.
Yep.
We literally would sit on the side of the court. So Isaiah's my favorite player, has always been. So I'm going somewhere with that. I hated Jordan. I couldn't stand Jordan. But now here I am, 52 years old, and I watched The Last Dance that came out over the last 3 or 4 months. Right. And I'm like, this cat was at a different freaking level.
Absolutely.
What is the difference, Justin, between even successful entrepreneurs and guys like a Grant Cardone or even a Greg Reed or a David Meltzer, a Sharon Lecter, who's Rich Dad Poor Dad, all of the things talk to me about maybe 1 or 2 key principles or things you see that's the difference between that level of entrepreneur and that higher level of entrepreneur.
That's one of the best questions anyone has ever asked me, because it's a subtle difference between super elite level and then your successful entrepreneur. And I'm not talking about revenue. That revenue to me, I'm talking about successful life business, not revenue. And the number one thing that I've seen, and this is why my business is so successful, is that I am constantly, essentially 100% of my time is in my zone of genius superpower, where I do what I like to do and what I'm good at constantly. There is really no deviation from that. If I don't like to do something or I'm not good at it, I either hire someone to do it or I just don't do it. And the really, 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 really great entrepreneurs all do the same thing. They are in their zone of genius, superpower zone all the time. Now, here's the difference between me and other entrepreneurs with that type of thinking. Most entrepreneurs, not all, but most, have very high quick starts, so they can boom, boom, idea. But they have almost no follow-through. So they're all over the place, and they have no follow-through. So that's most entrepreneurs. That's why they hire a bunch of people as their team to to follow through on their wackadoo-ness. So I'm the very rare entrepreneur that has high quick start and high follow-through. So I just follow through on my own quick start. Say I'm going to do it, do it. Say I'm going to do it, do it. Say I'm going to do it, do it. Hit the gas, pump the brakes. Hit the gas, pump the brakes. So that's very, very, very rare for an entrepreneur. I do a lot of brain tests and self-assessment tests. But the key again is do what you like to do and what you're good at, and eliminate all noise and all nonsense and all distractions.
I love it. When I take one-on-one, I've got several one-on-one clients around the country, and over in Europe, I've got an attorney who
Right,
owns a
of
business
course.
called Recoupex, and we talk a lot about
He's
every
an
time I.
entrepreneur who happens to be an attorney. He's not an
That's it.
attorney.
That's
Big
exactly right.
difference.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so with her, like with Lena, we had a one-on-one call this morning. She quit corporate America and went into her own space. She works in the cargo shipping industry.
Right,
But
right.
one of the things I walk through with all my clients is I call it TOCID or TOICD. Things only I can do. Like,
I
what are
love
the
it,
things
love it, love it.
when you go through your calendar every day? And I make them do this. I make them go 3 days. Listen, if I tell them, if you go to the bathroom, I want it on the list. If you put a stamp on an envelope and walk it to the mailbox, I want it on the list.
Yep,
So we go through that list and we
yep,
circle all the things we
yep,
can delegate.
yep.
Just delegate this,
That's
this,
it.
this, and this, and you do what only you can do.
Yep.
Why don't people do that, Justin?
So the reason why, again, most of, not all, but a good part of my day is talking to people like you around the world. Usually, not all the time, but usually they're running high 6-figure to 10-figure businesses. Or they have the mindset where they will be one of those people one day. So the biggest reason why most people, based on my experience of talking to some of the top performers in the world, are not happy with their lives is because there are two reasons. One, they don't find out what they're good at and what they like to do. They never even find out. That's one reason. Then two, if they actually do find out, they don't do anything about it. So it's like, of course you're miserable. You're doing something that either you hate doing or you don't like, or you're not good at it. So that's a recipe to make anyone miserable, no matter how much they're getting paid or how much free time they have, or what. It doesn't matter, because if you're doing something you don't like to do and something you're not good at, for the most part, you're not going to be happy with that, especially if it's something where it's more than 5-6 hours a day. So I did the same exact exercise that you're talking about. I wrote down 30 things that I do, crossed off 27 of them, circled 3 things, and then created what's called unique ability out of that, where it's my unique ability is what I like to do and what I'm good at. So that's how I spend basically 100% of my day. It's never work. I work 0 hours every week. None of this is work for me.
That's exactly right. You say people never find out either what they're good at or what they're passionate about.
Right.
Or when they do, they don't do anything about it.
Right.
Why don't people do anything about it?
Yeah, that's a good follow-up question. I apologize for the
No, you're good.
landscaper noise.
I need my grass cut too. If he wants to come by my house, I'll shoot you the address.
Yeah. Do that. Don't do that in the chat, but do it somewhere else. But I guess to simplify it as much as possible is probably fear. I mean, what separates entrepreneurs from the average regular person is entrepreneurs are not afraid to fail, and not just fail, but fail spectacularly. They're not afraid to take risks. And again, most people, especially now in COVID, are cost scarcity mindset. And I don't work with anyone like that, because that'd be like hitting me in the head with a hammer over and over, and then I'm dead, and then just continuing to hit me in the head. But it's like the people that aren't afraid to take risks, aren't afraid to invest, those are the ones that, yes, they probably have the biggest failures, but those failures will actually lead to the biggest outcomes. So that's why I just like talking to people like you, because you understand that. You don't have to force a conversation. Like, we've really never even talked before, but I feel like I've known you pretty much my whole life. And so that's really what my company is on a higher level of thinking. It's not really a PR firm. It's just a giant incubator of geniuses around the world, and we're constantly introducing each other for mutual gain. And the byproduct is I'm constantly getting intros to companies around the world that want to hire my firm. So there's no funnels, or I don't sell anything. There's none of that. It's just create value for people, and then they create value for you.
Yeah, I love it. You said earlier to just start it. You see a problem, you solve a problem, you have a successful business.
That's it. That's the success. That's the number one thing for any successful entrepreneur. So I talk to these people all day, and they're like, oh, I was annoyed by this, or I was in corporate and this thing bothered me. So instead of complaining about it, they just created something to solve it.
Right. I went and started a business to solve a problem. You said something just a minute ago, Justin, that is obviously you and I are together today because of our mutual friend Greg Reed.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier. you talked about, I'm in a network of people, and it's kind of an incubator of genius,
Hmm.
an incubator of genius.
Right.
Talk to me about how important for our audience today. Another thing, it's written in my, I have a quote every single day: get in rooms with people who think bigger than I do.
Yeah, I'd
Every
like to
single
be the
day.
dumbest person in the room. I love being the dumbest person in the room.
Talk to me about the importance and what you've seen, not just in the groups you're in, but with, again, those, when you go back to high level, and you've been in Chicago, so you got to watch the bull, you got to watch all of those things.
Yes.
Indiana, you're in, I mean, you watch Bobby Knight, you watch,
Hmm.
the genius of, talk to me about the importance of relationships and circle of influence and sphere of influence in our
Yep.
lives.
So mindset's number one. Relationships with the right people is 1A.
Mm.
Without that, one of my good friends who I'm talking to later today, his name's Quentin. He always says your network equals your net worth. And
Yep.
that's so we just talked about it, but I like being the dumbest person in the room because I like learning things constantly. And my business is just a little over 3 years old. I didn't even know what an LLC stood for before I started this, or what a W-9 was, or I didn't know you had to pay taxes 4 times a year. I was never taught any of that. So I'm like a sponge with these people. I mean, I wrote a best-selling book about it because people are like, how did you build this company in 3 years? I'm like, well, it's 30 lessons I learned in my company's first 30 months from some of the top entrepreneurs in the world, and each one of those lessons is a chapter. So it's like, if you're the dumbest person in the room, you can only rise with them. I hate being the smartest person in the room because it's just, there's not much I can add, because usually the people, when I'm in the smartest person in the room, it's like a total disconnect. But when I'm the dumbest person in the room, my brain is actually very similar to theirs in terms of like wanting to learn. It's just they know more than me in certain things, and I
More
just
experience.
right. They have more experience, right?
Talk to me. Your book was a bestseller. 30 chapters on
Hmm.
one thing you learned from different people for the first
Yep.
30 months.
Yep.
Give us an example. Give us a couple of those, Justin.
Sure. So I'll hold it up only because
Come on, man.
So Chris Voss wrote the foreword for it.
Yep.
So he wrote one of the top business books in the last 20 years. So like a lot of people write books and it's all BS. Like if I do something, I either do it or, it's all in or nothing. So this book has made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. But the three things that really have hit home are: one is do what you like to do and what you're good at. Two is when you start a business, it takes 2 full years to really figure things out. So it's not like a simple overnight success process. It's not going to take 6 months. It's not a year, even 18 months. It's 2 full years. The third thing, and the most important thing that people have told me that they've gotten from reading the book, is only work with people who look at things as investments, not costs. If someone asks me, what do you cost or charge within the first 5 or 10 minutes, they're essentially immediately expelled from my network because they're only thinking on a transactional level. And that's toxic, because the only people I work with, we work on things in a real relationship level. The byproduct is transactional. And people who think on a transactional level, not only are they toxic, but then they usually hang out with like-minded people. So if they gave you a referral, it'd be to another toxic person.
That's so good. Only work with investment-minded people, not cost-minded.
Yeah, I'll show you. There it is.
There you go. Partnerships is investment, not cost.
Yep. That's the number one thing that people who have read it have told me that they've really appreciated. Because that word, investment versus cost, it's a life-changing difference.
So what do you say to the entrepreneur who's trying to get off the ground? Because I tell my real estate team this all the time. As I've scaled and built my real estate team, one of my agents, last year I did about $8 million in transactions on my own.
Great.
7th out of 37 agents last year.
Awesome.
And one of my young guys said, Ken, how do I do 8 million next year? I said, you can't.
Right. What are you talking about?
20 years.
Right.
I've been adding value for 20 years. You have to look at, and I tell them this every morning in our team meeting, you have to look at people through the lens of value and building relationships versus the lens of transaction.
Transactional is a byproduct of it.
When you do that, people will knock your door down to do business with you.
That's right.
But how do you fight that, Justin, as a new entrepreneur or a new business person, not to give into that?
Yep. So I was one of those people. when I first started my company. I mean, my brain has evolved in the last 3.5 years. So to get my company's first 5 clients, I reached out to 5,000 people. So 4,995 no's for 5 yeses. And not only was that overwhelming failure good, because I learned who my tribe was, but it also forced me to really talk to a lot of people and learn about people and develop relationships with people that actually did have my mindset. So talk to as many people as you can and figure out what you like to do, what you're good at, who you like to talk to, who you really don't like to talk to, and then develop your own, superpower area of genius, and then everything else will follow. And then provide value to people first. Offer to help people first, and the byproduct is they'll help you.
So where's a good place for people to get a hold of your book, Justin?
Yeah, I was going to say landscaper.com because it sounds like I own a landscaping business here, but my company's website is brepicllc.com. That's B as in boy, R-E, P as in pony, I, C as in cobra, LLC.com, brepicllc.com. But on LinkedIn, I got about 22,000 followers, and so Justin Breen on LinkedIn, I use it as a commercial for other people, so that's a good place.
I love it. So we talked earlier about mindset. Let's talk a little bit about strategy. So if you are, obviously your book, 30 months, different entrepreneurs, different mentors, people you pull real life stories. I mean, this is how you built your business to be successful today. Yes. Talk about the importance of, and you said it takes 2 full years to understand. So I am literally on podcast, Grow Stack Drive. We just dropped 3 online courses on Kajabi that were 8 weeks. They're 8 weeks long a piece. I was on the phone with Jared Glantz this morning, the president down at Cardone for a grant at 10X. And not everybody can reach out to Jared and go, "Hey, you got 15 minutes tomorrow, so we can talk about how I build my sales team."
Right.
How do you develop strategy if you're a new business in those first couple of years, Justin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I won't swear here, but essentially the first 2 years or the first couple months, I was just throwing stuff against the wall and saw what stuck. And again, I'm absolutely not afraid to fail in any regard. And again, failure, it's just a word. Like, failure is actually not a word for me. It's just kind of like every great success I've had in my life, whether it's starting my business or meeting my wife, has been preceded by a gigantic failure. So again, the thing is fear. It's like, don't be afraid to try different things. I didn't even know my number one, like, in terms of getting people in news at a high level, there are very few people in the world who are better at it than I am. But I didn't even find out my number one superpower was actually connecting people on a global level until my company started to evolve. And that was the coolest thing for me writing this book, was like, I actually learned what my company really is. It's not even a PR firm. It's that incubator of genius around the world. So evolving, not afraid to learn, not afraid to talk to people, getting out there, and instead of talking about doing it, action, just actually doing it.
Sharon Lecter said something a couple of weeks ago that I've talked about when I interviewed her last weekend. I talked in my group coaching online and my one-on-ones. She said, what we need is motion, not magic. She said, there's no magic potion. It's about motion. She said, when you get into motion and you begin to act. I shared that. I don't know. I heard her. We were at a one-day deal at Coach Burt's Lodge, Michael Burt's Lodge in Nashville. I was with him and Tim Story and Sharon, and she said that day. Ooh, I was like, I wrote it down and I started sharing it with people. And I've got just one friend of mine, dude, I shared that with. And dude, it changed his last month and a half. Literally transformed his business just by, not that he didn't know that, it was a reminder to him I've got paralysis by analysis. I've just got to get out and act. And the moment he got out and acted, dude, deals just started coming.
That's what happens.
And he's made more money in the last 4 weeks than he made in the last 4 months.
So that's exactly. So again, since COVID, your business has exploded. My business has exploded because when you partner with, again, not transactional, when you partner with people with investment abundance mindset, that is the action. Most people scaling back, holding things close to the vest, But people who take action are the exact opposite of that. They realize correctly that this is the biggest opportunity ever, not only to help their businesses and brands, but to really help society, at least on a regional level. But a lot of my clients are helping on a global level because COVID has actually brought people much closer together.
Right. Yeah, I believe so too. And that's the one thing I loved of the one, I think the byproduct that was really good for us as a community, as a country was it really took social media and really, so we actually use social media for what it was for, which was really to connect and Zoom. And,
Correct.
if you're like one of my good friends who works for Salesforce, and I think Mark Benioff and those guys invested like 110 million into Zoom 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Salesforce did, and it's worth
Yeah,
fucking
whatever.
more than they're coming out. It's insane.
Right, and people probably laughed at them when they did that, but
Exactly right. So talk about leadership development. The three legs of Growth Stack Drive are mindset, strategy, multiplication through leadership development. Talk to me about the 3 years and how you've seen not only just yourself grow, but how you've been intentional to help your team grow as well.
so, man, these are really good questions. If you had talked to me 3 years ago and I had heard myself talking now, I would have thought I was a completely insane human being. But what I've seen is that mostly every super successful person not only talks like this, but more importantly, they think like this genuinely. Again, it attracts people with this mindset. And the people that don't think like this, they think it comes off as arrogance, or they just they don't understand. It's actually the opposite of arrogance because I'm essentially terrible at almost everything. I'm really, 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 really good at two things: connecting people on a global level and getting people in news at a high level. And I'm a really good dad/husband, but I'm useless besides that. I don't have any other skills. So it's the opposite of arrogance. And so when you lead by example and you deliver results and you get stuff done and you take action, then like you said, people will just follow you. They just follow you. They gladly will pay you whatever you're
I
asking.
was on a call this morning. I told you I was on the phone with Jared Gallant this morning about 15 minutes,
Right.
president at Cardone, and then I got on a call with my sales guys. I hired one full time. We're about to add another full time sales guy
Right.
for our
Of
Growth
course.
Stack Drive team.
Makes sense.
And that's the one thing we talked about. I just said I'm a terrible sales guy. I'm highly relational. Let's hang
Yeah, I
out.
don't sell
But
anything.
yeah, right. But the thing about what we've done is exactly what you just said. We've been in motion. We're doing things. The real estate's been successful. The coaching has been successful. The podcast now is taking off at a level
Right.
that
And that'll
we've
keep
never.
going. That will keep
Oh,
going, by the way.
it's been unbelievable. So what's happened is it attracts like, and it almost goes back into, I love the words, the incubator of genius.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting people around
That's what
that
it
are
is.
able to do that.
And there's no limit to it. So there's a couple things that I think you will benefit from and your audience certainly will benefit from based on what I've seen and what I've heard from you. One is the 10X book is great. My 10Xing in life has nothing to do with revenue. It has nothing to do with employees. It has nothing to do with office space. It has nothing to do with new technology. My 10X, and this just shows you can 10X anything. So my 10Xing in life is two things. Network on a global level, because that creates endless opportunities for your network and yourself. And then two is 10Xing experiences in life with my family, because when you have a good family life, you have a good life. So that's it. So that focus, everything else gets eliminated. The other thing is, that is literally pertinent to what we're doing right now, is the power of podcasting. And so the biggest surprise that I have seen, again, I've been in media my entire life since I was like a 6-month-old reading the Chicago Sun-Times on my mom's lap. So the biggest surprise that I've seen since leaving traditional journalism to start my own PR firm is that podcasts like these are not fully replacing mainstream media, but they're in the process of, if not eventually going to fully replace, they're getting there. So here's why. There are three main reasons why. One, I'll say this slowly because usually I talk very fast. One, the host is a visionary entrepreneur, usually like you. They're not a journalist who's a journalist. I am an entrepreneur who happens to be a journalist. Big difference between a journalist who's a journalist, entrepreneur who happens to be a journalist. The host for these shows understands usually how it feels to be an entrepreneur. That's one. Two, You can do a deep dive on the guest, a 30 to 45 minute, hour interview. You really get to know the person. It's not a drive-by interview. 3, the most important thing by far is the audience. While not necessarily the biggest audience, it's the most qualified for potential leads because it's a like-minded person is going to listen to this. An average regular person, likely, it's possible, but likely they won't be listening to this because they're going to hear this conversation and likely think we're two aliens talking to each other. But a high-level entrepreneur will be like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And that's my tribe. So host is usually a visionary wackadoo. It's a longer interview so you can get to know the guest and the host. And the most important, the audience is usually like-minded tribe as well.
You know what's crazy is, we do the virtual summits once a month where we bring in 6 to 8 communicators, 10 minutes apiece to talk about a specific subject. And then, we do about 5 minutes of Q&A. And so out of our podcast and that virtual summit have come some of my closest friends over the last.
That doesn't surprise me. Why does that shouldn't surprise you?
Oh my gosh, dude, we're like that with Greg Reed. I had Greg on an Instagram live 4 or 5 months ago, right in the middle of COVID, or right as COVID was kind of getting going. And dude, the next thing I know, I was like, it's funny because Greg even said on there, he goes, yeah, I just don't like we get on podcasts. Guys say you want to grab lunch, you want to grab coffee. I'm not a lunch or coffee guy. And I'm like, oh crap, I was going to ask you if we could, so we get off air. And literally, I told him that too. I told him that at his house that Saturday. We get off air and Greg's like, you know what, kid? If you're ever in California, I'd love to connect. And I went, well, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna be there in 2 weeks. He goes, we got Saturday from 9 to 10:30.
Yeah, he'll do it.
9 to 11 because he had a meeting after that. So yeah, it's been some of the closest people because we really do, and it's a great insight. People are able to. Grant, the last mastermind Grant did back in June, well, the one before last in June, I went to, is $10,000. He's normally $25,000 for 2 days.
Okay.
$10,000 for 2 days.
Good investment.
30 of us there. The call I got from my buddy John Carey George, who owns an auto shop in Detroit. John called me, goes, hey man, did you hear about this? The mastermind? I said, no. $10,000. This is what he said to me, Justin. He said, imagine how many years we can save in our businesses by spending $10,000.
Right. It's an investment.
Sit with Grant for 2 days.
Right.
I walked into those 2 days and walked out with, at the end of the 2 days, Grant goes, Ken, what do you got? And I'm his top licensee. And he goes, Ken, what do you got? And I flipped over my journal and it said speed in big capital letters. I just wrote it over and over and over the second day. I said, Grant, I've done a lot of stuff, but I'm not moving fast enough. I'm not investing enough money. And he just got out of his director's chair, come and bear hug me.
Right.
And dude, I sat down at my chair, text 3 people, started our online course process. And here we are 3 months later with 3 8-week courses on Kajabi, right. All everything.
So you just answer your own question about success. What separates people from successful entrepreneurs from a regular person? You just answered it yourself with that anecdote.
Yeah, most definitely. So, what's on the horizon for you, Justin? What have you got coming up next?
Yeah, so I'm like the outlier of outliers, and how I look at my life is I have Monday through Friday. I have 5 to 10 conversations like this every single day, and it literally creates all these opportunities. I don't know what's going to happen day after day, and so when you get through the endless rejection and the ups and downs, you kind of get to a place where I'm at, where you're sitting in your backyard and spending time with your children and working with some of the best people on the planet, and then those people keep introducing more people like that, and it just there's no limit to how much it can grow. So I'm enjoying my life and watching it just continue to get better and better and better, and I'm just very, very, very thankful that God's given me this brain, because it's a very strange brain, but it's led to what this is, and I just keep learning every single day. So I don't look at things like, oh, what's 3 months from now, or what's 3 years from now.
So let me ask you a question, because I know this used to be the end thing 20 years ago. Was a 5-year, a 3 5-year, and a 10-year plan.
Right.
Do 3 and 5 and 10-year plans even exist anymore, Justin?
For some people, they do. I have 5 life goals. I'll share with you 2 of them that I actually care about. The other three are just kind of fun trips with my family. But the two, I'm 43, so the two life goals are one, to live to 100, so that's 57 years to go, and then two, really the most important one, is to be at my grandchildren's weddings
Mm.
in functional capacity. So my sons are 7 and 6, so being at my grandchildren's wedding is a long time from now. So that's how I look at things. Because I am so accepting to having great things happen in my life, all these great things happen in my life on a daily basis. And it's very exciting when that just builds upon itself. Um,
What
so
did you do to get to where you dude, what you
I'll
just said,
tell you exactly what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened. So, end of 2018, I had made more money in one year than I'd ever thought possible, and I'd never been more miserable in my life. So I'm
Mm.
like, made a lot of money, never been more miserable. That doesn't make any sense. So I realized what actually did matter, and and revenue didn't matter to me. What matters, what makes me happy, is connecting with people on a global level and experiences in life with my family. Byproduct of this, my company's, well, it's September now, and a couple weeks ago, my company's revenue profit, I'd surpassed last year's record total in August of this year. But that's a byproduct of that. So I focus on what makes me happy, and byproduct is company successful.
I
That's how
love
I
it.
came like that, going through a very, very dark, very depressed state of like money didn't make me happy. So I'm glad I went through that.
Well, not only that, and I've seen that a long time. Out of the past 25 years, I spent half in full-time ministry, vocational ministry, planting
That
churches,
doesn't
pastoring
surprise
churches.
me at all.
And
No, I'm serious. It's good.
so when I hear that from people, and again, we like even on our Grow Stack Drive courses, on the Drive course about multiplication through leadership development, it's leadership development through significance versus success.
Right.
It's if you start out to be significant, you will always be successful. If you're
That's
in it
correct.
to help other people
Yes.
become the best version of themselves, take
Right.
them along the journey versus using them to get what you want,
That's right.
when you lay your head down on the pillow at nighttime, you can lay your head down on the pillow, close your eyes, and think to yourself, that's how you live a day.
That's right. And so it's interesting because the story that'll stick with me is your associate who wants to be at the 8 million mark. And I understand people are motivated with that. I get it. It's good to have a
Right.
lot of money. That's fine. But it'll be interesting to see how that person's mindset changes as the years, and I'm guessing they will change.
Mm-hmm.
Most high level entrepreneurs are not consumed with revenue. They are consumed with the things that I'm talking about.
Right.
So again, I was like that too, and I learned the hard way that that's not what makes me happy. So
Yeah. Well, Justin, man, it was a pleasure. Honored for you to take some time out today and
really
let me be
appreciate it.
one of those 5 to 10 conversations.
Oh man, it's great,
From
man. This is my drug. It's my energy fuel.
incubators of genius from around the world, and
Right.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be lumped into some of those
Thanks,
in the
man.
group with some of those guys. Man, appreciate it. Justin, one more time, the best place to connect with you is
Find me on LinkedIn, Justin Breen on LinkedIn.
okay. And hold that book up one more time. And where can they order the book? On your website? Get it on
Uh,
Amazon?
Amazon, Books a Million, Barnes and
Okay.
Noble, Target. It's on Audible. It's weird having a professional actor read your book, and then there's only one swear in the book. It's in the first line, so it's very weird to hear a professional actor do that. I'm still
That's
not getting
hilarious.
used to it, but yeah, it is funny. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun writing that and really helping people change their lives.
I love it, man. Well, Justin, I look forward to connecting off air again and just building and develop a relationship, man.
Dude,
Love
there's
your
a
heart.
lot of people I'm going to introduce you
Yeah.
to. My brain,
Uh,
if I wasn't talking to you live right now, I'd be doing it, but I
does your
will. It's coming
hey
shortly.
does your brain operate that way too?
High quick start, high follow through. High quick start, high follow through. It's never stops. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I tell people all the time, I love movies. And they're like, really? I'm like Gladiator, Remember the
yes,
Titans,
yep,
like those are two, V for
yep,
Vendetta.
yep,
And
yep.
they're like, I don't have time. It's the only thing I do that shuts this off.
Right.
Like when I watch a movie, it literally shuts. I have to take they'll take my phone away from me. Like it shuts this off, and
That sounds amazing.
I can lock in and rest. Hey
Love it.
guys, thank you for joining our Grow Stack Drive podcast today, and my friend Justin Breen. Check out his book, Epic Business. He said the forward by Chris Voss. FBI negotiator, one of the top business books in America right now, 30 Secrets. And guys, listen, you can circumvent the growth process in your business by learning from mentors and people that
Yes.
have been where you desire to go.
Yes.
I did it today.
Yep.
A 15-minute call with Jared on our sales team.
That's
Justin,
me every
thanks
day.
for joining us. Guys, listen, we'll see you next time on the Grow Stack Drive podcast. Appreciate you guys for joining us today. Justin, enjoy. Hey, the grass is cut and there's no more landscaping that needs to be done today.
I hope. See you, man.